So before I start and stuff, we're here today in reference to another German Shepherd Black and Tan male, unaltered, named Whiskey, 2.5 years old. This is another potentially dangerous order being heard. I'm passing forward pictures of Whiskey. Whiskey is still here in our care and custody, and I'm also sending up the actual police report in reference to my victim's, the present incident that occurred. And then for the record, Officer Santiago is going to interpret for her if you have any questions for her or if she wants to give any more input in reference to the incident itself. The police report is pretty accurate, so if you wanted to read that while I was passing it through. So on April 29th of 2019, Animal Care and Control received a police report from Police Officer Harper, ID 1321 from Eastern District. Officer Harper's report advised that on April 28th, at approximately 3:53 p.m., they responded out to Woodtree Circle in Annapolis for a report of an aggressive animal. The caller reported that a German Shepherd just bit someone. Upon Officer Harper's arrival, Officer Harper spoke with Mr. Christopher Hemerich, whom stated that his German Shepherd had been accidentally let out of the residence by a child. Mr. Hemerich provided the animal's information, which is Whiskey, a German Shepherd weighing 74 pounds, rabies vaccine, good through 4/23/2022. Mr. Hemerich stated that after capturing his dog, he made aware that the bite occurred. Officer Harper then spoke to the victim, Mrs. Anna Viveros. She stated that while at the sidewalk in front of her residence, the dog bit her on the right thigh and right arm. Ms. Viveros stated that the dog tore her pants while biting her leg. Mrs. Viveros produced the pair of pants that was torn and showed the injury, a small abrasion to her arm. Mrs. Viveros did not want any medical attention for her injuries. Officer Harper then spoke to the witness, which was Mr. Matthew Gibbons. Mr. Gibbons stated that he had only seen the last part of the incident. However, he did see the dog bite Ms. Viveros. An exposure report on Mrs. Viveros was called in. I briefly spoke to Mr. Matthew Gibbons. I still haven't got a statement as of today. However, he did agree that the police report was accurate. Animal Care Control Bite Officer Herbert received the bite report on Mrs. Viveros and the police report research history on Mr. Hemerich and the address provided by Officer Harper, and learned that on October 29, 2018, Mr. Hemerich's dog Whiskey was involved in a bite to a juvenile 14-year-old Carter Summers of 934 Hilltop Road in Arnold while he was getting off the bus, and Whiskey was at large at that time and charged Carter and bit his arm. His injuries were minor and it broke the skin. Animal Care and Control issued an administrative warning letter to Mr. Hemerich that advised some recommendations to help prevent any further incidences with Whiskey. Those recommendations were as follows: enrolling him in behavioral trainer, neutering him, securing the pet inside a crate or locked room, or securing with secondary barriers to prevent escape to the public, and a 6-foot leash with a muzzle when off the property with an adult. This letter also advised that if any subsequent reports received may initiate an order under Anne Arundel County Code, Article 12-4403, under dangerous animals. On April 29, 2019, Officer Herbert contacted the dog owner, Mr. Hemerich, and advised about the present bite, reported, and due to the prior history, that he would have to bring Whiskey in under quarantine and public safety investigation. Mr. Hemerich brought his dog in on May 1st, 2019. On May 2nd, 2019, Animal Care Control issued a potentially dangerous order and means to protect the public under Anne Arundel County Code, Article 12-4403, under potentially dangerous and dangerous animals. An amended order was sent to Mr. Hemerich on May 10, 2019 to take out the crate and room. However, all other conditions remained. May 15, 2019 received an appeal from Mr. Hemerich. Whiskey is still in our care and custody and no compliance at this time. Ask her if she wants to add anything more than what I said.
De todo lo que ella dice, de lo que pasó en el incidente, ¿tú quieres añadir algo más de lo que pasó? O lo que ella dijo del perro.
Bueno, no entendí exactamente todo lo que ella dijo,
Okay.
pero no sé si tengo que decir yo como según yo pasaron las cosas.
Okay.
She
You can
didn't
address
really,
it to them.
she did not understand
most of the stuff that Officer Thomas stated, but she has a couple things that she would like to add if, in regards to the case and what happened that day.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Bueno, ese día yo salí a mi carro a dejar la maleta de mi bebé y a recoger un poco de basura que tenía en mi carro. Justo ya cuando iba yo a regresar a 3 pasos de la puerta fue que el perro me ladró y me atacó el brazo primero. Después,
After this. So on that day of the incident, she came out to her vehicle to unload some stuff, and upon returning back to her home, walking back to her house, the entrance, she heard the dog barking. When she turned around, the dog came at her and bit her arm at that time.
después me espanté, grité y lo que hice es seguir caminando. Y fue cuando él se me volvió a lanzar y me mordió la pierna y me desgarró el
Y el
pantalón.
perro cuando te mordió la mano, te soltó.
En el momento sí me soltó, de ahí se quedó parado, di otro paso y fue cuando me volvió a atacar la pierna. y me mordió el
Cuando trataste de
pantalón.
entrar a tu casa.
Sí, yo grité y el señor abrió la puerta y yo me metí. Ya de lo demás, la verdad, no.
Okay, upon that time, when she first got bitten from the dog, she screamed at the dog and pulled her arm off. And as she turned around to take a step into the house, the dog bit her on the backside and then released again, and she went into the house.
Eso es
¿Algo
todo.
más?
No, eso fue todo lo que pasó con el perro. Eso fue.
So basically, that's how it happened. It was very quick, and her mind was juggling at the time, and she was just kind of afraid.
And I did pass forward the police report in color so you can see that he did rip her pants.
Okay. Anything else? And the dog is still here, correct?
Yeah, Whiskey's still here.
Okay. Please
Yes.
tell us your side.
So I was downstairs just on my computer, and then my sister came down to me and let me know that my dog had been out, and apparently had been out for a little while without anyone telling me. Keep in mind, so both incidences, he was let out by her, and she has mental health and behavioral issues. It was deliberate on her end, so it's kind of hard to control. But when I went outside, I saw he was running around. The first thing I see is a neighbor with a gun, and then a neighbor with a stick, and they didn't take any of, so all their children were outside and everything else. They're all yelling at the dog and everything else, so obviously making the situation difficult. I'm just trying to get Whiskey inside, just to remove him from the situation. He had gone down, basically he thought he was playing, he was grabbing sticks and stuff like that, wasn't doing anything aggressive, there was no barking or anything like that. He literally thought he was playing. He had gone down to where the victim got bit, a little bit down the, so like I'm here, went to the right. I followed behind him, and I don't know if she didn't see me. I saw her at her vehicle. I motioned to like stop for a second so I could grab him, and I just heard her scream and then raise her hands up, and that's when I saw him bite her, right? So I don't think it was like an aggressive act or anything like that. Like he was just like I think he thought he was protecting me because he was in between both of us. On top of that, so this isn't what I witnessed, but this is what my mother and my grandmother will talk about. The kids were throwing sticks at him and everything else. The man with the large stick, the man with the gun, like it's nothing that she did that caused the bite. He was provoked beforehand. He was nervous. Like, that's my understanding of the events. So I've taken him to the dog park 200 to 300 times with zero incident. He's not an aggressive dog. I'm not going to talk about it in the house because obviously dogs act how they do in their own home, right? That's their family, but I will tell you, like, from experience, like, he has had zero incidents every time I've taken him to Cape St. Clair Dog Park. I've taken him there since he was 8 weeks old. Everyone there knows him. It's never been an issue with people or dogs. It's just that my sister put him in this scenario, and she's since been removed from the home, so that removes that possibility again, so.
Okay. Did you heed the recommendations from after the first bite?
So I wasn't able to. So it was a couple of different extenuating circumstances. So I'm a manager for a large retailer. I was one of only 2 key holders at the time. So I was literally working every single day. On top of that, I was in a bad living situation. So our last home had massive health department issues. Like the water was unusable and everything like that. And we had to leave abruptly. So financially, I had to take care of that. Plus, I was using all my time between there and work. So not an excuse, but that is the reason why that I had not been able to take care of it. My work life has just now gotten stabilized. We just now hired people so that all the load isn't on me. So that's my situation.
And what are you asking the commission to do?
So I'm fine with the insurance just because it seems like a smart thing to have, but I am disputing the muzzle just because, like I said, 200 times plus at the dog park is zero issue. And the secondary barrier, I think it's unreasonable, especially since it's the only exit to my house. I feel like it's a safety issue. My mother can't get around well. My grandmother's over. She can't get around well. I don't think that's a realistic thing to ask. I have a fenced-in backyard with no gate, so he can't get out of the backyard. And it wasn't like he just snuck out behind somebody who was deliberately let out. My sister's now living with her father, so.
So did you get the insurance?
I haven't gotten the insurance yet.
Did you get a quote yet for it?
Yes.
And how much was the quote?
A lot less than the last one. It was like $500 for 6 months.
Okay.
So I'm fine with the insurance. I can do that.
So you're asking for removal of the secondary barrier,
Mhm.
the muzzle.
Yes.
Was there anything else?
I mean, really, I both cases, like, I understand that he still bit someone. There was no witness to the first one, as far as I know. And then just overall, like, the nature of it, it was caused by my sister. I don't even think a potentially dangerous order needs to follow him around for his whole life. He's only 2, right? I don't think that's indicative of the nature of whiskey, right? I'm not going to sit here and talk about, like, playtime stories and all that stuff, but, like, I don't think that's indicative of how he is, his temperament as a dog.
How often do you take him out for walks?
Every day.
Okay, even though he's got a fenced-in backyard to play in?
It's not a huge yard. I mean, he's a German Shepherd, he needs to move around. Ideally, I take him to the dog park on my days off
Okay.
because he can run around. He runs with all the other dogs. He's actually been bitten at the dog park. He plays with all the small dogs, so he's been fine. He has a full harness that I use with him and everything else, so.
Does he have any formal training?
No, and I'd be okay with that as well. As well as him being neutered.
How often does he go to the dog park?
Every day, I'm up 2 days a week at least. So, everyone's known him there since he was a puppy. That could be easily corroborated. So,
Okay, before all these people were waving sticks and all this stuff at him while he was out loose, he had already bit the woman. Do we know what provoked that?
what him biting her?
Yeah.
So, what I think it was, I mean, as you know, like German Shepherds are a very protective breed. I
Right.
think him, just the proximity of her to me, and her putting her hands up in there, maybe is that what maybe he thought he was protecting me.
But you were downstairs on the computer.
No. So the bite was last after all the provoking and everything else. That was the last step in the events.
Okay, I got the impression she got bit a couple times, like, I thought it
Yes,
was.
it was twice.
I'm sorry?
It was twice, and
Right.
once her back was
Yeah.
turned.
Right.
Mhm. Well, this was after, so it was quick. It was like 1-2, like that.
But you were downstairs on the computer, so.
No. So
thought
I
that's-
was downstairs on the computer.
Right.
My sister came downstairs, let me know that whiskey was outside. I came out, saw all the people with their children, the guy with the gun, the guy with the sticks, which the police officers didn't even respond to the guy with the gun. They went to the dog directly, which I thought was kind of odd.
Yeah.
But they were all out there. I then followed Whiskey. He went down the sidewalk a little bit towards her home, and then I followed him up. She was by her vehicle, right? And that's when she was like, I don't know, it sounds like she was moving some stuff in between her house and the vehicle. I didn't know what the case was. I tried to motion with her to stop. She may not have seen it. It's not her fault. But the dog, I think, reacted to her being right there and her putting her hands up in there and making a noise or whatever. That's what I think happened. So I was outside at that point.
So you witnessed the first bite?
I witnessed both bites.
Both bites,
Yes.
How did you get the dog to return to you?
I was able to grab him right after that.
I didn't hear you say you called the dog from a distance. Let's say you walked over to your house, dog is down the road a little ways. I'm just asking you, how come you didn't call the dog by his or her name and say,
Well, I did. That's an assumption. I actually did call the dog.
okay?
Yeah, I talking about the important events.
Okay.
But I did call him, yes.
And how did the dog get out of the house the first time? Tell me again.
My sis-
I know she did, but how? From what position in the house? Was it in the garage?
The only
From
exit is the front door.
So she's
Front
literally
door?
taking the dog and opening
No,
the door.
she opened the door and let him out.
And just say, here, go outside.
Yeah, 'cause she was trying to
So it's
argue
not
with my
like-
mom and prove a point.
Right.
So this isn't like she's just leaving a door ajar.
No.
And you said, I don't want you to have to tell us that your sister's never coming back home and nothing like that. You know, but how are you going to protect the public from your sister when she does come back to visit?
So he can be downstairs with me because I'm in the basement of the home. I can key and lock that door and have him downstairs with me. He'll be fine with that. Plus the backyard, the exit for that's down there. But she's living with her father currently, so.
Okay.
And how did the dog get out in the first incident?
That's what he said.
Same scenario.
Same thing,
Mhm.
both the same.
Yeah. She's been diagnosed bipolar and ADHD, so.
Do you have any, you talked about other people can corroborate, like from the dog park. Do you have letters from anybody, anything?
No, I could get that if need be. I would have to
Well,
go
we're here
there.
today.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Officer Thomas, you were gonna say something?
So, just real quick and stuff, I know that he was sitting there talking about people and kids throwing things and a guy with a gun and a guy with a stick or whatever and stuff. I actually had Officer Santiago ask her of what she actually saw out there and if she did see that, and she said no.
Yeah.
So I'm not 100% sure because I don't actually have any proof that that was actually going on. However, I did wanted to bring something to the attention, and you know, when I did get or Officer Herbert was investigating the first incident and stuff, I just wanted to read the actual statement from Mrs. Summers. This is the child's mother. Basically, she advised that in October the 29th, her son Carter, who was the age of 14 at the time, was bit by the neighbor's dog, and when he got off the bus around 2:30 at the corner of Deep Creek and Hilltop Roads in Arnold. She advised the dog was not provoked. There was a lady trying to get the dog. She said it was her son's dog and she could not get him to go home. The UPS driver was there trying to get the dog away from the son for about 10 minutes. So I just wanted to add that in there. Basically, her son called her husband to come home from work. After looking at the bite, the husband took Carter to a pediatrician. Due to being an unknown dog, the pediatrician obviously told them to go to the ER for the rabies vaccine. She basically said in the meantime, she found the lady at another neighbor's yard trying to get the dog. I told her that the dog bit my son and needed to know if the dog was current on its vaccine. She yelled at me it was not her dog and that my son was a liar. She was verbally combative. At the time, I called 911. They were connected to animal control immediately. In the meantime, the owner arrived on the scene, attempted to get control of the dog. He had a collar with tags. I called my husband with the tag information. They did not receive a rabies vaccine, but did receive antibiotics. The owner was finally able to get control of the dog, and Officer Wolf wrote up the incident. So I just wanted to add that in there, that, you know, obviously there's a concern, and obviously, you know, saying that the sister was opening the door. I just don't want there to be a possibility, understanding that if, you know, he gets out or if he bolts through a door, understanding that that's what the secondary barrier is going to stop.
Can I say something? So my point is that that's not his tendency, right? He doesn't bolt for the door or anything like that. He was just let out deliberately, and it was just like, it's an act of, hey, I'm gonna get you or whatever on her end, right? So I don't think that poses a risk to the public, is basically my point.
Okay, here's my concern, is by your own admission, you were downstairs on the computer and you said the dog had been out for a while, you just didn't know how long.
Right.
Now, while you witnessed both dog bites, the dog had been out for a while, and obviously if there was a man with a gun out there, he had to have time to go get that gun, and he had to have a reason to believe he needed a gun. So what happened out there before the bites?
So my mother and my grandmother can shed light on that.
I was out
Okay,
there the entire time. Within 2 minutes of the dog going out the door, I was out the door. My mother had come to pick me up, so she was sitting outside.
Is this the first incident or the second
This
incident?
is
Second
the
incident.
current one that we're discussing.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you, go ahead.
Okay, so like I said, my daughter, like he was saying, what he said about my daughter is true. She has serious mental issues, and you know, she deliberately opened the door and let the dog out because I wouldn't do something that she wanted me to do. Okay, she's since been removed from the home. She's not coming back even for a visit if I have anything to do with it. I'm gonna just be honest with you. I just can't take any more of that. But anyway, and on this day, she opened the door, she let the dog out. Within 2 seconds, I went out the door behind the dog. Now, at the time when I went out the door, the only people outside was the neighbor next door, myself, and his wife. My mother was sitting out there in her car parked because she had come to pick me up. We were going out for the day. He yells at me to get my effing dog, you know, you white trash and all this other stuff, great. So I go proceed to chase the dog around the court. My mother gets out of her car, she's trying to help me. We're calling the dog. He's running around, you know, smelling trees, doing all this stuff. And there were some little children out there playing basketball. They were the only other people out there. He started running towards that way. Then all of a sudden, everybody in the neighborhood comes outside because this guy's yelling and screaming, carrying on and fighting with me, cursing at my mother, all this stuff. He goes back into his house and he comes back out. He has a gun. I say to him, "Is that a gun that you have?" He says, "Yes, it is." I said, "Well, why do you have that gun?" He said, "Well, in case I need to shoot your dog." He said, I'm a police officer. I can do that if I want to." Now, the dog hadn't attacked anybody at that point, wasn't acting aggressively. He simply went in and came out with his gun. So now I'm concerned because there's children outside, first of all these people, and this man's walking around with a gun, telling me he's a police officer. I don't know who he is. So then it proceeded from there. We're calling the dog. At that point, the man with the gun, he goes back in his house. He comes back out now with dog treats because he sees now that the dog is not really aggressive. He's trying to help me to get the dog by tempting him with the dog treats, and he's trying to help me out at that point. This was going on for a good 30 minutes, 35 minutes, maybe closer to 40. There's these kids outside start picking up sticks. They're throwing them at the dog. They're screaming at the dog. The dog's running around like crazy now, all over the court, up and down the court, circle, 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 circle. He then my son came outside, okay? The lady was down the street. It's not really that far. She's maybe 3 houses down from me. And my son went down there, immediately went out to the right to where she lived, and that's when the dog, she was scared, and I understand, and she raised her hands and was yelling, and the dog bit her from there. But, this was a good 40 minutes of this dog being outside with these things happening before he did anything. He was simply running around doing what dogs do, smelling trees, happy to be out, blah, blah, blah. As far as this barrier thing, I have health issues, mainly with my legs and things. This is the only exit from my home. There's no other way to get out. I have no back door. I have a deck with no steps, and I have a yard with no fence. My concern...
No fence, no gate.
Fence with no gate. My concern is, if I have to get out of this house quickly, I may not be able to, if I have to stop to remove barriers and things like that. So I'm concerned about that. This dog, I also know about the first incident if you want to hear it, because some of the facts are not correct. I was out there for that too. I'm the woman that was outside.
I have a question about the second incident. If you're
Yeah.
running around for 40 minutes trying to get this dog, why didn't you go back and get your son who got the dog instantly?
I just said that he came outside.
Yeah, after 40 minutes.
No.
No.
It was, he didn't
You
come
said
out.
you went out the door after 2 minutes, and the dog was running loose for almost 40 minutes before you went to get him.
That's
and
not, I did not say that. I did not say before I went
I'm
to get
pretty
him.
sure that's what
I
I
never
just
went
heard.
and got him, so I did not say that. I'm not the one that
Well,
went
maybe
to
you
get
didn't
him.
go get him. My point is, why didn't you?
I did, because I'm trying to chase the dog. Because I have people outside with guns and sticks and cursing and screaming at me. What do you mean why not? I'm trying to get the dog.
Okay. So he came outside, and within how much time was the dog under control?
Maybe 10 minutes.
I'm talking, how long before you came out the door before you got the dog under control?
About 5 minutes, maybe less than 10 minutes. Less than 10 minutes.
So less than 10 minutes. You saw all this go down, and she got bit
Mhm.
when you went outside. So you couldn't get control of your dog within 10 minutes of coming out the door and it bit this lady. That's what you're
Correct.
telling me.
Correct.
Right,
Okay.
we were trying to get the dog in. The dog was running off the street. The dog was doing all these things. But he was out there. But I'm not the one that went and got him.
I know this is hard enough on you explaining your situation, but not one time have I heard anyone say they took the lead and put on the dog. Your dog has been running free from what I'm gathering when it's outside. No one say, if the son had said, well, I ran in the house, I got my lead, and I put the lead on the dog. The dog roams the neighborhood from what I'm hearing. None of us heard anything but a leash or lead.
We didn't have the thing with us
I mean,
outside.
help me out here. What am I missing?
So I had the leash with me trying to get him because obviously that's the only way I'm going to get him in the house is if I
Yeah.
hook it to his hook his harness on him and grab him that way.
Okay.
I think he was just excited from everything that was going on, right?
Okay.
That's the best answer I can give you. I don't know what's going on in his head, so.
Okay. Thank you.
So, Mr. Hemerich, in order to try to work with you on the secondary barrier situation, do you hold the entire basement? Is that your living quarters?
Yes.
And if you were to lock and key doors to that basement, how many doors are we talking about?
One.
Okay.
The back door. The sliding thing.
That's already locked.
You lock that too. That's the barrier.
So a sliding glass door and then a door
At the
that
top.
goes from
At
the
the top, the
basement to
steps.
the top.
Mhm.
Got it. Okay. I'm just trying to get a game plan here.
Mhm.
He wouldn't need a secondary barrier below going into a fenced door with no gate.
Right. But right now, there's no lock on that interior door, correct?
Well, I have a storm door that locks, and I also have a big door.
To the door from the
The front
steps that
door.
go
It
downstairs?
has a push lock.
Yes.
I can lock it from the inside.
Okay,
Yes, that has a lock as well.
got it.
So
I'm
does
just
that
thinking-
comply as a secondary barrier?
If he's in the basement.
No, I thought she said
I
they
mean,
had
as
a
far
storm
as-
door, they got a full door and a storm door.
Yeah,
Is that-
storm doors, because they can fail. You know, I mean, that's the only reason why we don't put that in any of the orders, or
That's why I'm
even
asking.
consider them and
Well,
stuff.
yeah.
I mean, if there's a, like, say there is a storm door and an interior door, and then we have like a porch of some sort, and where the porch can be used as secondary barrier where there's a gate, a physical gate, where that person have to either go up the stairs, go through the gate and get to the door,
Right.
and stuff that would be considered. Or if it's an interior door to an interior door going in, like a porch,
Okay.
you know, going in, then we would consider that and stuff. I think that what we were concerned here is that understanding how the dog got out, I think what we were concerned is that, you know, the dog was involved in 2 bites outside.
Right.
Understanding if he, you know, he's saying that he's friendly, you know, with everybody else and stuff, but these were unprovoked bites on both situations. And I think that's what I was concerned about. And as far as Anna's concerned and stuff, she's been consistent with her statement. You know, especially turning her back on the dog, trying to get into the house, and the dog made it a point to grab her enough to rip her pants. You know, that was a substantial bite, to grab a hold of her and rip her pants.
Yeah. Anything else to say, to add?
Yes, I'm Christopher's grandmother, and I was there. I had just pulled up in my car, and the dog got out. My granddaughter let the dog out. He started running. I got out of my car, started calling him, and the events as far as the neighbor cursing and carrying on did happen. But I personally think that the dog was just excited by these kids taking sticks, throwing sticks at him, screaming and hollering, and all these people gathering outside. I think that got him upset worse than he was from running around. He kept running around, smelling the trees. There was a couple who came up the street who tried to help us. Also, it was a man and his wife. I don't know who they were, but they came and tried to help us get him. But I even opened my car door because he likes to go for a ride, but he wouldn't get in the car. So I just feel that mainly the dog did all this because he was excited. This lady, I saw the dog grab her shirt in the back, and she was throwing her arms up and hollering, and I think that made him more excited. But that's what I have to add.
Okay.
He's not aggressive. I don't feel he is an aggressive dog. I mean,
Could you tell me what happened with the first incident, because I do want to hear more
Sure,
about the
because
dog's
it's a little bit
behavior.
different than what, okay, so
Go
the
ahead.
same thing again, my daughter let the dog out. My son had just left for work, so I immediately, again, went outside. There was nobody I could call because my son wasn't there. I went outside. The boy was getting off the bus at the bus stop. The dog, I was on foot at this time. The dog, you know, was running around, same type of thing, approached the boy briefly, then I walked over to where the dog was, and I called him, and he started to follow me. Well, then he just took off again. Okay, so then I went back, because like my driveway was here and the boy was right here. I got in my car to follow the dog so I could get him, because like she said, he likes to get in the car. Usually if you open the car door, he'll get right in. And so this was probably maybe 15 minutes, I guess. The boy's walking home because he lived down the one street that I was driving my car on. So I was on right behind the dog the whole way. He didn't nip the boy at the bus stop. It was down the road a bit. It wasn't immediately when the boy got off the bus, like she said in that report, because it was, we were probably out there 15 minutes when he did. And then I went down to, but I mean, I didn't see the dog nip him, the boy saying that he nipped him. I went down, all the way down the end of the road was this big house with a big yard. The lady has a German Shepherd. She was trying to help me get the dog. We're in her yard for probably a good hour, I'd say, trying to get him out of her yard. He's running around playing with her dogs now. He's having a good time. He's not ready to go. I called my son and told him, you know, he needed to come home because I couldn't get the dog. And then the mother of the boy came down to this lady's house and told us, you know, that this dog had bit her son and et cetera, and that's when first I heard about that he even had bit the boy, because like I said, I didn't see him bite the boy, and I was there the whole time, so I didn't even know about that. And then my son came home, you know, from work, and he got the dog back in the car. But other than that, I didn't witness him biting that boy. But I know it didn't happen at the bus stop though. or immediately when he got off the bus, because I was standing right there literally next to the boy when I saw the dog approach him when he got off the bus. So I know it didn't happen there. Maybe as the boy was walking down the road, you know, heading towards his house, because the dog ran off that way, and with me following him. But I didn't see that part of it, so I really can't say when that happened.
Okay, so just to reiterate, what you're still asking to be waived is the secondary barrier and the need for the muzzle, correct?
Correct.
Those are the only two things? Okay, just want to make sure. Anything else anybody wants to add before we close this for deliberations?
So she wants to add, when she raised her hands up, understand that they stated they saw her raise her hands up and yell it. The reason why she did, she was basically in fear for her life because she realized she was being attacked by this dog. She was trying to scare the dog away, but obviously she felt in fear for her life, so she's raising her hands up and yelling because she had nowhere to go. She felt she was trapped as she's trying to get away from the dog.
Okay.
And I think that basically my concern at this point is that, in understanding what they're asking, is I believe that, you know, when he is out, whether he's excited, my concern is I don't think he's excited. Or if he does get overstimulated, he's gonna bite. So, you know, we have a child and now I have an adult. And we have to basically somehow be able to contain this dog. Whiskey is a lot bigger than Maverick. So, and a lot of times they don't give a warning. You know, they just do it. So, you know, we're a little concerned about that. And I really do not want this dog running in the neighborhood and off the property. I feel that we put that secondary barrier in that warning letter for a reason. Is because the fact that he was out and running and it took 10 minutes, you know, even the UPS driver tried to get involved, to try to stop the dog from attacking the child. So we feel that it's appropriate. Whatever you decide to do today, again, like I said, he is in our care and custody.
Okay. How many other times has this dog escaped and run loose in the
It's
neighborhood?
only two.
Okay, so, okay.
And he was a year old on the first, so
Okay.
that's still a puppy, is it not?
Yeah, that's not an excuse, though, I
And
mean,
he's, because he's only two
Doesn't
right
matter.
now.
right.
And also, I wanted to add that my grandson went immediately to talk to the people, the woman that was, but they didn't speak English, so we could not communicate with them.
Sure. Okay. Anything else before we close the discussion, before we deliberate?
We're closed to public participation, we're open to deliberation.
Okay. Anything?
I think the muzzle requirement is a necessity. I'm not too sure what to think on the secondary barrier at this point. I'm open to suggestions.
I'm sort of the opposite. I think the secondary barrier is very important because that's how he got out. When he got out the front door, it wasn't when he was on a walk and on a lead. So, and based on the history, secondary barrier is pretty important. I could consider the muzzle portion as long as we add in training. That would be the only condition to swap that I feel is reasonable. Secondary barrier, strong.
I think that the muzzle should remain in place anytime, especially anytime the dog is outside. And I'm trying to clear my head in terms of handicapped people in the house needing to get outside. But the secondary barrier is essential. It's just something we have to do, at least my recommendation. It's unfortunate, but you know, I don't need to go on and on, but the dog has been twice unprovoked, and we know that. So that's my take.
I agree. The secondary barrier, I think it's only as good as if, you know, his sister doesn't come back and let the dog back out through both barriers. I mean, that's kind of the only issue with it. I mean, obviously, I think it definitely lends a helping hand when it can, but I mean, it's not going to mean anything if someone just lets the dog right out.
Yeah.
And as far as the muzzle goes, I mean, I feel like it definitely protects the public. So I don't see any reason why not to have it. I mean, there's no great argument for not having the muzzle. I mean, there's nothing that's going to hurt the dog. You know, if you look at the whole thing, I mean, there was a warning letter given. I mean, every one of these things has already been mentioned prior to now. I understand there's extenuating circumstances as to why the warning letter may or may not have been followed, but, I mean, it was all right there, you know, could have been dealt with ahead of time, as far as I'm concerned.
The dog has escaped twice and has bitten twice. By the mother's testimony here, it didn't happen at the bus stop when the child got off the bus. It happened potentially 15 minutes later. Then the dog ran to a yard and was loose for an hour. Then you called your son to come home from work, so how long did that take? Another hour? This dog's hard to catch. Then the second incident, you said the dog was running around for 40 minutes. So, you know, I am absolutely ma'am, please. So I am absolutely convinced of the need for the secondary barrier, and number two, for a muzzle, because dogs escape twice, bit twice, hard to catch. And we don't want to, no, you cannot say, I'm sorry. We are done till, okay, so that's, I'm a strong proponent for both the secondary barrier and the muzzle.
The only thing I'd be interested to hear is what, Elizabeth, how would you propose training? Just, I'd be interested to hear how you propose implementing
It's a
mandatory
condition, but
training.
it's pretty, open.
Is it?
It's pretty open. So I don't know, we'd probably have
I mean, that's the other big thing with this case to me, is the fact that the dog's now 2 years old, has had no training essentially, and it's now bitten twice, like you said there. I mean, there's been no attempt to formally train the dog or do anything
Right.
specific, that would make me feel comfortable about really modifying anything,
Well,
honestly.
it's control. I mean, there's not, I mean, we can hear the testimony, and there's not a lot of control over the dog, which I think is really the reason that makes this, you know, potentially dangerous, is because there's no control.
Right.
I have some questions about the actual dog's temperament itself, but it's the lack of control. And so that's why I emphasize the training over.
So there's no like approved list that people go to, it's
No.
just, I see, wow.
So this is part of the code she was referring to, it's 12.403.
B 11 and 12.
Yep.
Assessment
Do we have a
and
motion?
specialized.
I'll make a motion that the secondary barrier and the muzzle ought to remain in place
You mean the order is?
So basically,
that
order as it stands.
You're making a motion
as it
that.
stands.
I second it. All in favor?
3-2. So.
Motion passes.
This is just a recommendation for the chief of police. We will hear a response from him within 15 days, and I will mail you his decision. Are you abstaining or opposing?
Opposing.